Hey guys, welcome to Experience Fridays. My name is Sharan. I'm the founder of Red Experience Design. And for those of you that don't know about Experience Fridays or are visiting us for the first time, we started this talk as an internal discussion every Friday. And as soon as it got boring listening to the same people, we started opening it up and inviting other interesting people from around the world to come and talk and share a little of their experiences with us. And today is just like any other, except it's promises to be far more interesting because you've got a very unique, I shouldn't say very unique, unique perspective on the world of in the world of design. It's I should say very very unique because not a lot of people have been in Jay's position and seen the things that he has seen. So we have him sharing his perspective on how to affect design shifts and paradigm shifts like that within companies. I'll talk a little more about Jay. He's been he I met him first at Adobe India, and then he went on to Flipkart and MakeMyTrip. But he's also spoken at TEDx and Adobe Max and Collection. These are all premium or very well-reputed, places to have spoken, and rightly so because Jay comes with such experience. Uh, he's also a great storyteller. And one thing that is not in his bio is that Jay has a favorite font that he chooses every year. And I'd request him to share that with us by the end of the talk. So before we start off Jay's talk, I just wanted to have some people introduce themselves. I'll just pick on a few of you because there's a lot of people attending today. So I just would request that you share your name and your where you work, but also share an app that you really like. Okay, and no saying "make my trip" just to keep things fair. All right, all right. Let's get started. I'll just allow everybody to unmute themselves. Let's just start with Mandar. Mandar Kale. Hi, you were it because you turned on your video. So go ahead, Mandar.
Hi Sharan, hi everyone. So I'm Mandar. I'm a designer. I had the privilege of meeting Jay, I think 10 years ago at a conference, and I took this chance to attend his talk again. I'm the head of academics. I lead the academics at Start India. So it's a French school set up in 2018. And yeah, that's me. I graduated from IDC in 2006, doing various things, and here I am. Yeah.
Sure. Great. What's your favorite app?
Oh, Snapseed for sure. I like photography, so Snapseed is my favorite app.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'll just ask Durai to speak, please.
Yes. Hi, I'm from Chennai. I'm a UI designer in Trimble.
Okay.
I think I attended the Design Up session in Chennai session, and I started following Jay in Twitter, and that's I also follow Red and other design companies. That's how I came to know about this session. I've attended another previously. I attended one or two sessions of Red. My favorite app would be SMS Organizer from Microsoft.
True. I really liked it when I was on Android. I don't think it exists on iPhone, right? Anyway, cool. Thank you for sharing that. Karan, would you mind just speaking up, telling us a little about you?
Hello, hi. I don't know if there are other currents on the call, but
Got it.
my name is Kaman. I am a designer on. I work for Google. I am a designer on Google Discover.
Okay.
Uh,
You have to
but
name an app that is not clever. So
yeah, sure. Actually, I have a recent favorite. I mean, so far I was liking it. So it's Clubhouse, which is essentially an audio social network.
right.
But lately they've started opening up like a lot of rooms that are not I mean, you earlier it was like a closed app and like in more interesting rooms, but now there aren't as much. So it's more of a love-hate relationship with the app.
Thank you for sharing that. All right, Tirnam Mukherjee, would you mind sharing a little about
Hey,
yourself? Hi.
hi, I'm Tina. I work with Go MMT team. I work for the for Go IBO now.
Okay.
My favorite app as of now, I think I was just browsing. It's Swiggy, I would say, because it's the only thing that's keeping me sane during the pandemic.
Sure, sure.
Yeah,
I
that's
use it quite a bit, so I totally get you. Yeah, yeah. It's definitely got a sticky factor to it, isn't it?
right.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Inu, would you mind just introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Inendrijan, working as a UX designer with the SCL software.
Okay.
And my favorite app is a Cred. Actually, it's a really helpful to manage my expenses on card expenses on this app. That's it.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Thank you for guys for sharing this. And without further ado, Jay, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, folks. I think lovely to see a lot of familiar faces. Hi, Mandar. I think a lot of people I know, of course. I'm bad with names sometimes, but I'm sure once I see many of you, I'll know that I probably met a whole bunch of you. So thank you so much, Sharon, for inviting me. It's a real pleasure. Sharon and I worked together for almost 5 years, 5+ years actually at Adobe. I think it's been such a pleasure being able to serve so many teams. There's been Adobe, there's Flipkart, there's MakeMyTrip, but Adobe will be special because that was my first big team in design in India. Of course, I did one more team, which is for Ray and Keshavan before I went to Adobe. But this was a full-fledged team. And I think we had to prove that we did not do boxes for Adobe software. So I think it was like you had to prove it. Like, what the heck? Why? What do people think? We make boxes for them, kind of, right? So I think that was also something very different. And I think the scale that together we went. The other thing which I'm very super proud about the team is a lot of people that you see in design today. I mean, leaders in various apps, whether you know Swiggy and Cred and all of this, have a very strong Adobe connection. So I think it's so nice to see this whole bunch go out there and influence a few generations of design and designers. So I think that's super, super nice to sort of see. Okay, so we have two presentations. I'll try and keep both of them pretty tight. The first one is my journey, and I was talking with Sharon and Preeti, and they said, yeah, why not, kind of. And I'll try and keep it short. There are a couple of things that, looking back, I would love to share with all of you. Maybe that will help you in your journey, because your journey is slightly different or very different from my journey. Because of the larger factors which were playing out. So hopefully that will help you. And of course, the real meat of the presentation today is how do you make a tangled mess like MakeMyTrip? And I'm not saying mess in the sense that they were always a good business. They are still a good business despite all of the craziness which has happened to travel. But how do you make good design, good business? And that's the second part of it. And many of you probably are in large organizations and trying to make sense of that. Hopefully there is some takeaways. Happy to answer as many questions as you want. Okay, without without much delay, let me just jump into this. I can see again some more familiar faces.
What I'll just tell the team, the people attending, just post your questions on the chat. And I'll call out to you as soon as Jay takes a break, and we can ask the questions. Thank you, Jay.
Great, thank you. I think this is the one which is the most asked question. Can you see my screen? And I think you can, most likely. So great. Okay. This is the 4 parts. Anyway, forget it. Let's kind of jump into it. So I was born in the Manchester of the East, and that I think most of you might have guessed, or I think we don't use the term anymore. I don't think in the school textbooks that reference is there anymore. I mean, this was Ahmedabad, the whole textile center and all of that. And of course, that's me wearing oversized glasses. I love glasses. I didn't realize that I'll be wearing them for life. I was given very sane advice by a very friendly gentleman who used to be a family friend. He used to teach at NID, and he said, never send your son to NID. I mean, don't ever go to NID or any design school, because you'll be a hippie, you will have long hair, which has, when he was not a certified futurist, of course, but and maybe he will smoke weed and you will kind of, so I think everything he said is probably gone. I work for a large organization. I hardly have any hair left and worrying too much anyway, but yeah, that's the perception kind of. Of course, I thought about being a policeman. That's another thing which kids at that age think about. But this is where I ended up. Beautiful place. I think in retrospect, I think about how lucky I was. People hate NID sometimes because they've not been able to get into it. But I think it's a lovely school and great people, beautiful campus. Of course, I was very drawn to typography and type, and this is what we did a whole bunch of things. The lady down there was very famous once upon a time, which is also a great reminder that fame passes very, very quickly. And today, especially even more, because this is April Grayman, by the way. She was the cutting edge graphic designer. I mean, she was everywhere. She had interviews. People would follow her work. It was like amazing, of course. But again, I think none of you may have, or most of you would not have heard of April Grayman now today, kind of, right? Brody, again, ruled. Brody, many of you won't even know about who Neville Brody is. But these were some wonderful influences, of course, at those point of time. This is my batch, crazy batch of people. Just notice how many people there are in the batch and how many people graduate. So this is, I also managed to teach some of the old world typesetting and typography. That has remained a lifelong obsession, and some of the paper engineering stuff. And this is the first set of people who graduated. The first one top left, of course. That's quite a culling, you might say. Of course, people graduated. People don't want to leave NID. That's the other part of it. I mean, if you can, you will become a postbox in NID kind of thing and stay there forever kind of thing. First posting or first job was in Delhi, city of jinns, and I think I experienced Delhi in full glory, kind of just being all over the place in a bike. And eating at all sorts of random places. Great place to eat, great for festivals. Some of my early work, again, my first work was for Humayun's tomb and a map and stuff like that. Again, had great fun understanding the tomb and how thoughtfully they had done a lot of work on that. Harita remains, I'm sure many of you have spotted the Hindi her in there already. That remains an old favorite. I think that's my second piece of work, commercial work ever. The guy in the middle reading newspaper is a friend of, he was many years my senior, called Shiva, and I think he and I have been collaborating on and off. One of his big kind of gifts to me was Peter Matheson's The Snow Leopard, which I took to heart and decided to go on a super long trip of some 5,000 plus miles. And of course, it was also the Beat Generation, Jack Kerouac, and a whole bunch of them. And this was my, I think, starting in Delhi. I used to have a princely sum those days. I used to earn about 7,100 rupees was my salary per month. I actually bought a small fridge. I had a very good barsati, very nicely done barsati, actually, like one kitchen and a studio apartment sort of thing. That's the right description for it. And I sold the fridge. Whatever little saving I had, it allowed me to go around. Of course, I was traveling by trucks and other things. And of course, I did a huge amount of trekking, which is very cheap and kind of cheerful all over the place. The person you see on the left, she joined me on the journey, Aisha. Aisha is, a lot of people ask me, like, how do you manage to design up an X and 20 things? One is that I think I'm a workaholic, that's one. The only reason I managed to do it, or the big reason I managed to do it, is of course because of her, because She is my biggest supporter. She is also my most honest critic and keeps it very, very real, of course. But I think that journey ended kind of in matter of months, but our other journey, which has nothing to do with the mileage, but with time, continues even today. So that's Asia and me. Of course, coming back, one of the first things, I didn't have a job. I didn't know when my journey would end. I think I traveled about 4 months across India. I think Asia joined me for about a month or so. Interestingly, there was Asia, there was someone from Kerala and someone from Kashmir. So we probably had almost a national integration happening. Those days, that was the big thing. Of course, today is the age of disintegration, but that's a different story entirely. Maybe you can chop that part of from the recording. So yeah, I think it was fun being across the country. Sometimes we had some fantastic lobsters in Odisha. We actually went on culinary trips. We went on truck trips. We just went anywhere and everywhere. Where like unreserved train compartments. Fantastic journey that we had. Of course, now comes the part, and I thankfully had a job. I ended up working with Ogilvy and Mather, had a studio called Artistry. And Artistry was, they were saying, hey, whereas these guys do advertising, we will do only branding. And then that's the thing. And that's where we said, okay, here's a big once in a lifetime opportunity for you. Of course, I think I hate this logo. I mean, essentially me and my boss then, Arvind Lodaya, he's also a busybody like me. So he's also, he and I designed that. We presented it to Deve Gowda. Of course, we didn't directly meet him face to face. The story we tell ourselves is that he went to sleep in the middle of a meeting. So, but anyway, he must have said this logo, and we had way better sort of identities out there. And I think I hated this one. But then I realized that it doesn't matter what you love or what you hate. What matters is the occasion. If it was any random logo, it was not the logo, it was India's 50th year of independence. I think that mattered more than whatever kind of you put together, right? Anything you put together, people will love it because it is symbolic of something much bigger than each of us and our craftsmanship and all of that. I think that was a great learning for all of us. And I think it still lives on. I mean, I see occasionally on trucks and random places, people have painted 70 years and 72 years, and they keep updating it. I think people are pretty sentimental about it kind of overall. So by now, Asia and I were married, and of course we were meant to go to Melbourne, but ended up in the middle of nowhere, that little dot that you see. The question we both got asked was that, how do you, like, is there a stopover anywhere? And we are like, no stopover. I mean, the only place you can land is the middle of water. Diego Garcia, no, not a good idea at all. You just go wherever you go from, you just go straight and you land in Mauritius. There's nothing in between. There's just water kind of straight away. So yeah, I think closer to Africa than to India. It's really in the middle of nowhere when you look at the map. And it was a fantastic place. I think what a lovely place. There is mountains, there are beaches, the great drives out there. And I think I should have, yeah, these are the pictures of my office there, which is actually the estate of an old colonial sugarcane sort of baron who kind of left it, and that became our office. This is my teammates. Again, a lot of French folks, a lot of Bhojpuri French mix, which is very, very interesting. And that's my favorite car. It was always my favorite because it was my very first big 4x4. India, the biggest car you could get at that point was a Contessa, which I'm not sure some of you would have heard. I think Sharon would have.
I know this.
It was more like a truck than a car kind of thing. So,
but it was India's only muscle car, right? That's yeah.
Totally. So I think, yeah, this was like really big 4x4 kind of stuff. And sometimes you could put cycles in the back of it and take it to the beach. And I think we had a fantastic time for 6 months. And then we got super bored because there was no Netflix. There was one Hindi movie and one English movie every week. Asia got super bored. I got super bored. People were super nice, but everyone went to sleep after. I mean, all these shops shut at 7 in the evening and there was nothing. It was dial-up internet. So yeah, it was a crazy time in that sense. Okay, this happens to be my driver in Mauritius called Nasir. And as you can see, the whole bunch of people, including some of my friends, my parents, everyone is standing across him. He used to call us every now and then for biryani parties. And we had to like avoid him generally, but this is with his entire big clan, the whole Nasirs of the world united to sort of bring us biryani kind of. So out of sheer boredom, I made this website on the right, which was, I learned how to code. I made this website that got some award. It became some Adobe's site of the day. The navigation got some kind of good stuff, reviews in. It was a very unusual navigation. That navigation was done in Flash and the rest was purely HTML. So people like that whole combo part of it. And before that, I was trying to still sell kind of weird things to clients, like this calendar, which you cannot read ever. And this actually, I think for Sharan and a whole bunch of people, I think you've gone through this exercise, which is make a calendar unreadable. Sorry?
I totally love that exercise.
Make it unusable, make it user unfriendly, make it hard to read. And that's what you got to make. And I think the guys who were the best UX designers, they failed miserably at that. They couldn't just make anything beautiful and, unusable kind of thing. So I'm so glad the cred guys are doing it kind of. I think they have taken my philosophy to heart and they're doing it kind of. So this was fantastic kind of stuff. But I think we had fun doing all these kinds of crazy, unusable things and usable stuff, of course. This was one of my major projects, and it's very funny that I've come back to travel all over again, which is doing a whole lot of rebranding for a group called Sun. Sun has now become One and Only. But this was on the left, you see a website, which is one of the earliest websites for them. It never did anything finally. It was just pure brochureware, kind of never flew. Everything was Verdana and it was like such a pain. Even that welcome to Sun Resorts was a JPEG. You couldn't have any type. It was great to do those early experiments. It was so super frustrating. On the other hand, print was so beautifully kind of ahead of the time. Print could do so many things. You could do all sorts of lamination and cutting and all those kinds of things. It was like a dream come true, and digital was just kind of struggling big time. Of course, thankfully, somehow the word of my weird navigation went across, and the people firstly, they asked, who is this person in a place called Mauritius? And they first confused it with Mauritania. And then kind of realized that, oh, there is a place called Mauritius, and conversation started. No one hired Indian designers in the West largely, unless you finished your schooling in America and you went to work in the US. People wouldn't hire you in Europe generally, kind of, right? Because Indians did coding. I mean, they were the Y2K guys, kind of. They put that 0 in 2000 kind of thing, right? And that was all they could do. They can't do design, was the sort of especially design in tech kind of thing, right? But anyway, my Mauritius connection helped, and I landed a bunch of job offers. This was for the right is the view from my office. This was in Bristol and London. We used to shuffle back and forth. Bristol is lovingly called Bristle. And this guy there is Louis, not Louis Buñuel, Ipswich, what is his name? Anyway, he's Buñuel. And Buñuel is known for his work on large tech, like the bridges, the huge steamships. So he's the father of a lot of technology, and he's a Bristolian. And Bristol's railway station is beautiful, kind of. And I think when they offered me a job, it was like one crazy thing. I was looking at the recent salary survey and thinking about that. I got a job which directors with twice as much experience as me would never dream of getting in the UK. My annual salary was like a crazy number kind of thing. It was like, it was a .com boom. I mean, the bubble was rising and rising. And this is again, Aisha was studying, and this is her classmate. She had a fantastic set of people, which is from Japan and Ghana and Pakistan and God knows, I mean, every part of the world kind of, and me trying to get a Buñuel pose out there. We of course spend a lot of our money on buying random things from IKEA, and we probably splurge way too much on IKEA. In hindsight, save your money, guys. Don't splurge on IKEA or anything. I've been through that, so I'm telling you, kind of, I lost all my money and everything. That's again one of the views from one of the beautiful places called Kingsdown Parade, where we stayed in Bristol. So of course it was a bigger island, but the bigger island than Mauritius, but it's still a small island compared to India. But I think what was very big was the bubble part of it. I think it's kind of a really big bubble that was emerging, and we had no clue. I mean, we were all happily earning tons of money and spending even more tons of money. Kind of, I think when I think back of it, what all junk I probably bought, and kind of like trying to buy a PDA. PDA is not what do you think it is? PDA is what is a Palm digital? I think something digital
Personal
assistant.
digital assistant. Is
Yeah,
that
personal digital assistant. That's right. Yeah. So so I think we bought some silly things, kind of, and then you see a palm on the bottom right, this fish looking at it. This is one of Europe's or UK's best loved brands called Goldfish. Goldfish eventually died. It's no longer, I think, or it's become like a credit card sort of a thing. But Goldfish was big. It was a very loved brand. Peugeot, some of the early experiments in, like people tell me about deep personalization and all of that. And I'm also going to talk to you about that. I think Peugeot, we were doing some of the early work in that, and worked with a lot of people, like some of the speakers at Design Up, like Giles, Colborne, and a whole bunch of people. They were my colleagues, and we would talk about physics and behavioral sciences. And I think what I keep seeing is a lot of those coming back again and again, per se. Then, of course, there was one of my colleagues who wrote this wonderful book, and I think I've probably spoken about this book at least once a week, if not once a week, at least once every 2 weeks, because it's common sense, but you sometimes just don't get it, kind of. So that's the thing. But I think it was also a dark phase, and I remember I was supposed to go to Boston that week, but for some reason I didn't travel, and of course this thing happened. I think people were playing ping pong. We had huge ping pong sort of an area with huge TVs, and someone says, "Come on and look here! My God, what's happening?" And firstly, like everyone else, it was like, "Hey, that's a joke. Is that a part of some film or something?" And then you realize this is unfolding really, kind of. So that was it. The dot-com bubble just burst. It was like, boom, it went. My super high paying job, within months, I think my entire team got dissolved. So I had a small team, 4 people. The entire team went. I think even our HR guy went. I think no one really remained, pretty much. RSCG bought circle.com where I used to work. It became Euro RSCG Circle. All of us were jobless. I went back to India and decided to understand what's the, how does business and design really work? How does it all function? That's when I went back to do my MSc in design management in Manchester. The guy there on the left, David, while I was doing all of that, I was freelancing, obviously, like all good Indians do. And I also worked in British Gas, by the way, doing some accounts, so which is very strange. So I think I began to realize the stupidity of my ways, from earning too much and spending even more, kind of trying to please people who probably were also penniless at the end of it all. So anyway, I graduated, and David and I went into business together. So we had this company called Ideas Foundry, which was fun doing it because it was the kind of stuff I wanted. We did not make things mostly. We took design strategy, we thought about digital strategy, we kind of did a very, very unique set of things for clients across South Africa and Ireland and even China and all of that. We actually had an office, this tower that you see behind Saurabh and Lakshman. That is our office on the 6th floor, right sandwiched between Old Trafford, the cricket ground, and Old Trafford, the football ground. Though on football days, things became a little too crazy and we probably had to vacate the office by 2 o'clock. There was no work from home, so I think this was good fun. I think go home at 2 o'clock. So some of the stuff we did, of course, was, I think now what has happened is that UX is still not a word, by the way. People are still talking about interaction design, HCI, all sorts of things. But what is happening is branding and design for tech is merging. You want what is now very old hat, but 360-degree branding is what they would call it. At one end, you would have an ATM, a website, a transactional site. Transaction is a big thing, by the way. I mean, so you could actually go to a bank and do withdraw money and things. That's a big deal, kind of. I mean, it was very much there since 2001 too. and got easier and easier. But this was an interesting phase for design where you said, I'll make it fairly consistent across multiple touch points. That's going to be my play overall kind of. And this was a great place to be actually. But then again, 2008 strikes. This was probably a way bigger recession than 2001. And I think if we look at the impact of what's happening with COVID, I think COVID's contribution to job losses and a whole bunch of things, I think we are in a very good place, and please count your blessings where we are. One is it is in India, and India's general recession proof to all of these things. My fear sometimes is the more connected we are, the more recession unproof we become. The second is because India's gray market is something which is fairly recession proof. I mean, because there's so much of cash transaction that come what may, you just don't go down a hole sometimes. So unlike what happens in the West, and in UK, especially when it's a small country, it just kind of bear the brunt. Of course, things were not all that connected in a technology sense, which meant that you could not work from home, you couldn't do a bunch of things. A lot of jobs went. Very strangely, very sagely, I think back. I think I had this premonition earlier, and I was telling David that we should wind up our company. It's time to, and David said, no, if you want to go, then go ahead. Very interestingly, my very first boss from post-NID days was calling me back. And I told David, listen, I think best is to wind this whole thing down, and we should kind of close this whole thing. We didn't close it. Of course, sadly, David's main company got closed, which used to be also very important in terms of funding some of these stuff for Ideas Foundry, my company. The entire thing went bankrupt. I think there's so many people who went bankrupt in that. Thankfully, we had just left and came back. Wiser, of course, but none the richer kind of thing. It was, we had, this is one thing I reflect back on looking back. I think this is, I'll let you guys read it and absorb it.
Oh, lovely.
I think what happens is that when you begin to appreciate the deeper intersections between design, business, technology, human beings, behavior, like sciences, economics, you begin to see a lot more patterns overall. And I think I was very thankful I did my MSc. A lot of people said, what the hell you're doing, kind of doing like management kind of and designer, do something like film or graphic design, or like, so anyway, I'm so glad I didn't do any of that. So this was Sujata's kind of invitation to me, and I think it was 2008 or 9, I forget. I think 8 maybe, and then that's where, not 9 it says. This was the office. So Sujata and a whole bunch of us used to work together. Very small office, very cute office, nicely done with old-fashioned furniture. None of the sort of high-tech furniture with back supports and all of that. It's all kind of very much to do with all sort of antique pieces and everything around. Meeta used to work with us, who does the hard copy. Actually, Sujata also supported us with this thing, which I think in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. What does it say, the date? 2008, yeah. This was for a hackathon for design. I would hazard a guess that this is probably the very first hackathon for design, 24-hour challenge, and the winners went to Limoges in France. I'm not sure if any of you recognize, but I think one of the people who also went was this young chap called Rahul Gonsalves, who kind of is now part of Obvious. That's Shiva, by the way. His team also won something. I didn't realize it was his team till, but anyway, I was the organizer. They were the participants. That was the funny part. Limoges has a very weird, actually not weird, I would say. It's a very interesting looking dome-shaped thing, like a flying saucer. This happened, of course. Bengaluru International Airport happened. This is a point in time when an intern comes up to me and tells me, listen, this is like, you got the colors all wrong, because you just came back from the UK and you don't get the Indian color palette. Look at the Kanjivaram sarees and those houses painted there. She actually kind of tweaked the color palette. The guy who worked on Licious was also another guy who tweaked some of that. So again, a lot of history out there. Delhi airport happened, nothing to do with the carpet. I repeat that very often, but so I think Bombay, Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore. Bangalore is the one I'm most proud of course, because that's home, kind of homecoming, and lot of branding stuff. But at the same time, I was longing to go back to that amalgamation of branding, tech, design, where everything comes together. I think design with a big D, forget where the boundaries are, of course, kind of, right? And that's where Adobe happened. So interestingly, while I was still in Manchester, since 2006 or 7, I've been talking to Adobe. Adobe got me down for 2 days, made me stay in a place somewhere in Jayanagar. It was a very blurry experience. I just came, it was jet lagged, had a bunch of interviews, and then went back and had another set of jet lag. And but anyway, this kind of the guy we all know called Mukul, he said, I was still not sure whether you will come back to India, so I rejected you, kind of thing. So when he realized that I did come back to India, I think there's a guy called Phil Clevenger who calls me one day, and then we had a great conversation. I think in many ways, he was the first guy to get Sharan, me, Ranga. I think these were the 3 people that he hired mainly. And then, of course, there was a whole bunch of people that were there.
Like the featured Dreamweaver there.
Right, exactly.
Right.
This is the guy. I, by the way, I also wanted to join Adobe, but for the very different reasons. I wanted to be a type designer. So I think Adobe's type, this thing was always great. This guy is, if you guys can name him, maybe I'll just think who this guy is. I think I'll just put it in the chat. Sharon can confirm if he is the man or not. Or if you thought he was a woman, then, but he is the man. So anyway.
Right.
Sorry?
That's Sita, right?
Sita, that's right. Sita Ram Narayanan, kind of. And this is the
longest name in that list. Right.
This is our team. I still have it, by the way, in our office. So this is a placard of sorts with all the people, the heads of design of some of the companies and people from Google to everyone that you can think of. That guy in the middle getting squashed called Yash, he is a principal, I think, product manager or a product design manager in Seattle or Vancouver, I can't remember. He's had a part to play. Just recently, he wrote back to me saying, listen, this whole new Windows thing, the OS, I've had a part to play, and he's been talking about that something. So yeah, it's wonderful to see so many people out there and doing some more pictures. Of course, thanks to these guys, I lost my hair, as you can see, bottom right. It's a very interesting bunch. Broke my arm, went to Adobe Max. Yeah, lots and lots of people. We hired some of the, one of the guys who was a tech guy, which was rare in those days, but a tech guy working in design. So lots of people out there. That's the ex-Adobe reunion, bottom right, happening at Design Up.
Actually, we have 2 on the session today as well. Just wanted to call a shout out.
Right. There's some of the stuff we did. I think what we did was we did a lot of work. I mean, a lot of real good stuff on the usual suspects, which is your Illustrator, Dreamweaver, a lot of like really kind of different things. But what we also did was a lot of experimental stuff, like stuff which we would go and say, hey, I've got an idea and this is it. And there he comes again, kind of with something their team has done and blah, blah, blah. But I think what it did was to give them the confidence that, you know, these guys can do design. I mean, these guys can do something more than that. So the more crazy stuff we showed, which is extremes, the more they said, oh, if this team can do it, they can do the usual stuff as well, kind of. So I think in some ways we ended up doing some 26 products out of India. Whereas originally we were just doing components. We were, I don't know, with 5 people, but we ended up being 50 something. So always good to see that kind of that trust and design. Some of the other experimental stuff, which got hold of Paula Share and a bunch of other people to endorse, hey, this is a great idea. Let's do it. And Adobe would like all say, okay, no, we won't do it, because what we'll do is we'll take this idea, we'll make a component of it and put it into some particular thing. So I think large companies work in its own rhythm, and that's one thing that I was refusing to understand those days. But it's always good. Oops, what did I do? I went back. Anyway, you can watch the animation. So. Flipkart short stint, the one which you probably guys don't know about is I decided to do another startup called ConfiQ. That's my son writing a banner for ConfiQ. ConfiQ later became Attend. We had a good launch. We had some very good uptakes, but I think the funding was drying up. And that's when I joined a VC. So Attend was stuff which I had, I think this is stuff which is designed by me. I don't get to design many things, but whenever I do get a chance, I'll do something. So then, of course, design up somewhere during those VC days, and that's been great fun. Again, some of the usual suspects you will see, like Ranga and a bunch of other people. I think now I'm losing count. How do I know people from where? I mean, is it through Flipkart or Swiggy or Revigo or, I don't know, but I know a lot of people. That's it. This is again when Designer went to Singapore. We actually got a nice cathedral which has been converted into a conference thing, which was really fantastic. This is with my teacher, Mahendra Patel, my typography teacher. So delighted that I could get him to be part of Design Up in some ways. So I think those are the things that we live for, I guess. I think people really care. That's what eventually matters at the end. What we do, our work kind of gets like really old and kind of no one remembers that eventually kind of thing. Yeah, more design ups. Again, some familiar faces that you will see. There's Phil Clevenger and a whole bunch of people out there. Of course, Alan Cooper also joined us at some point in time. So yeah, that's what I think I believe in still. I'll stop here, I guess. And if there's any questions, would love to take it. How are we doing for time? I think we have taken 46 minutes there, kind of. That's easy.
We're okay, Jay. Yeah, we're okay.
So one thing I want to leave you guys with it, while I kind of maybe Sharan can, in case there's any questions now or for later, is that I was just reflecting with a couple of folks that, in the first 10 to 12 years of my, and this is for everyone who was in that time period, we did not have social media. I mean, there was no social media around. So we had zero pressure to talk about what we do and why we do it and keep showing your work every few hours in the day. I think it was a fantastic thing because it allowed you to just focus on your craft. For 10 years, you just focused on your craft. For the next 10 years, you took that craft and did something with it. You scaled it. You kind of helped teams grow. So it's a very different thing. And one of the things that I want to especially talk about to many of you who think that, oh my God, I'm not on social media or what am I doing? Don't worry. I think life is a very long journey. There's 20, 30 years of being a designer. So don't kind of get hyper that in 3 years, you are not a senior designer. 3 years in senior designer is like a very ironic because I think I'm getting to be a designer slowly. Forget senior and not senior and all of that. Titles, yes. I mean, the reason why titles matter is not for myself or for my peers, but to be, when you go into a meeting with HR and finance and all of that, I think it matters that design should have a seat at the table. I think that's the only reason why it matters, because eventually at the end of the day, we are all designers, end of story. Forget the senior, junior. You become a master when you probably worked on it for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. And this beautiful thing around fame versus mastery, I think I've written on that. A lot of people have also spoken on that. I think the idea is fame is what, 10,000 followers or 5,000 followers and you are famous. Mastery is that you never reach. I think there's never an end to it. So I think focus on the mastery part. Okay, I'll stop here.
Jay, I think you kind of like touched upon the first question I wanted to ask, especially in today's world, the idea of influence. There are trends that one needs to follow and there are trends that one needs to break, right? So what role do you see that playing? How does social media interplay with the stuff that's going on within companies? Any thoughts on this that you want to share? You're muted. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the big one really is, see, what happens is that you got to know who you are, understand who you are, and just kind of, essentially, it's like you're trying to chip away and slowly understand yourself. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time. I mean, looking back, I realized how much time it took. And I still don't think I know who I am, because we as human beings are just being, we are becoming. We haven't like become yet. We're just unfolding and becoming. So I think that's a beautiful thing to kind of just consider. And when you think of social media, it puts so much of noise out there that it interferes with understanding who you really are. And you just get pulled into lots of random directions, lots of random goalposts and all of that. So yeah, I think that's the other part of it. Maybe I can touch upon that when I talk about the MMT piece as well. Because there, I think I've been surrounded by a lot of people who have not bothered too much about social media or doing things. I mean, they're just bothered about, doing the work and crafting it and fighting the good fight and doing it again and again. I think that's the beauty of it, and discovering yourself through your work. That's pretty much what it is all about.
There's a question which has been asked by Mandar. What made it possible for you to reach so many people and get them together for the Design Up movement?
I don't know. I think it was just generally being dissatisfied and unhappy with the kinds of conferences that were there in India. I don't think anything was wrong really, but it was almost like saying it could be better. It's not the conference that I want to go to. And interestingly, MP Ranjan, who's very well known in the design circles, design guru and all of that. I mean, he would often tell me that, why don't you kind of do something that you hate? So take that hate thing and change it and do something about it. Tu kya karega was his usual thing. And he passed away that year. And that was the thing saying, let's do something about it. Let's not complain about it. Let's do something about it. It started small. We started with 230 people, but it just grew. I think it just doubled and almost doubled and doubled. And 2020, we are supposed to have 2,000 plus people, almost 2,400 people we're supposed to have. There's like a 10x of what we started with. But I guess it just happened. Right.
All right. We'll just pause with the questions for now if you want to talk about the next phase. Yeah.
So guys, I think whether you like it or not, there is another piece of presentation. This was like the
this is lovely, Jay. Don't even bother. Please keep going.
So sorry if I'm ruining your Friday, but I think the fact that you came here means that you probably have some time. Let me just pull that up. At any given point of time, I have way too many presentations open, as my guys will tell you. So, okay, here we are then. This is the MMT piece, which I guess most of you got fooled into and came for. This is what I think we said we'll talk about: design shift in organizations. Or I think I have an old one, which I keep going back to, the Ship of Theseus Guide to Reinvention, and I'll explain why is that. This is dedicated to all the awesome person or the people I work with, kind of, which is my wonderful team. Many of you are here today, I guess. These guys are can be melodramatic at times and can be crazy, but they are the most wonderful bunch of people, of course. So when I joined MMT, I think Keik, who's the curator of, former curator of Curious Design Yatra, tells me that, you're joking. He sends me an email saying, MMT just doesn't get design. You must be joking. And the transition happened here because I was with the VC, and the VC was the supporter of MakeMyTrip, or they were essentially the main investors in MakeMyTrip. And they said, hey, this merger is happening, would you like to go? And this is how I ended up. And my first thing was like, no, I mean, don't get it. But I started working with the team as a part of the VC's kind of agreement. And I really enjoyed working with the team. It was a very crammed office. It was a crazy, but this was a very nice bunch of people overall. I think the merger threw up a very significant opportunity to invest in a product and design and all of that tech and everything all over again, kind of, right? So this is what MakeMyTrip was. I mean, founded in 2000, listed in NASDAQ in 2010. So it's kind of, by the time I've joined in, it's almost 17 years. And I mean, think about it, a company 17 years later doubles down on, I mean, they already had design and tech and everything was very much there, but even more focus on all of that. And that's where I think I will talk about Cosmos and Cosmos begins. This is just to give you an idea of what all we do. We are a fairly large team. And when we said, what, you're such a large team? And then we said, you know, we work on a whole bunch of things. We work on pre-sales, post-sales, consumer, enterprise, all of that. And what we do is, so essentially we have this whole new fangled apps or diversions or digressions, plus we have what you usually know us for. I think you probably don't know a whole bunch of things here, which is the quadrants on the right and the quadrants at the bottom. You probably don't know much. Maybe not GCC, that's not meant for this region, so that's another thing. So there's a bunch of things that we do, and we are now today a team of 96. So it's great to be serving that team, the chief serving officer for the team. So right. It's good to kind of see how we continue to touch the lives of so many people. I think we can say, okay, 55 million, and, 100 million passengers and all of that. Fact is, a lot of people start and they travel with MakeMyTrip. That's probably the MakeMyTrip Go IBBO. So when I say MakeMyTrip, I think I'm talking about a lot of us. Strangely, we don't have one competitor. We pretty much compete with everyone, which is a lot of competitors to have actually in one app. So that's not really. And so obviously everyone was said the best design ever was ClearTrip. You can never have a better design than that. The toughest competition that we had pre-merger was Go IBBO, because they really sort of kind of ran around us and then did things. There were venerable outsiders like Kayak. Kayak was big. Booking.com was not that big then, of course. And the three big, I think what happened was one of the first things we tried to understand was what are the business blockers? And I think this is very critical to understanding anything. If you work in a large organization, how can design unblock, or what can design unblock for you? The first one was people love the colorful MakeMyTrip on the right. But yeah, I think everyone agreed that there's a little too much offers and deals and discount. I think it's purely from a arithmetic, it's just taking away money from the table. That's it, right? Forget good design, bad design, marketing, anything. How can we make money and how can we sustain ourselves? And deals and offers cannot be it. So when the merger happened, we said, let's cut down on too much of it, because we were counter offering deals for each other. And that was kind of bleeding us both. The other one was shipping the org chart, which is like everything, like flights has its own ways of doing things and hotels has its own ways of doing things. And inconsistencies hurt, because eventually what you realize is your user is still the same. I mean, who's buying the flights and buying the hotels and all of that. So inconsistencies really hurt in the longer run. The other one was that MakeMyTrip had a super app in the vertical category sort of thing, those kinds of ambition. Now, we had reached what I call the glass slab ceiling, which is you can't really seem to be able to grow. I mean, not that the team didn't have ideas, they had ideas, but we just thought about, let's redesign kind of, right? And my question is always start with the why. And I mean, why do we even redesign? And I think it goes back to the fact that we are seeking stickiness, and stickiness has to come from something else apart from just offers, right? So for us, it came from putting the my back into MakeMyTrip. And by that, what we mean is, each of the flow is a journey in its own right. Can we reflect those individual journeys taken and considered and all of that? Can we, even if we probably put out offers, can we build the offers around you and not build the app around offers? So I think this is a fundamental shift. You could say, okay, there's a whole lot of philosophical thing. But the very fact that put the my back into MakeMyTrip, that became like a rallying cry. I think marketing bought into it. Everyone bought into it essentially, kind of. And that let us do a bunch of things. So the journey to becoming a super app really is take away a bunch of things, apply those principles and make it happen. Sounds very simple. It wasn't that simple, of course. And this is the work of the Commons team there, some fantastic work by Abhinav and a whole bunch of people who were there then and still there. The second two parts was that about inconsistencies and unscalability. I think the moment we solve for all three of these interconnected issues, really, kind of. So instead of designing pages and inconsistent pages or flows in some ways, what we went on to do is to design the cosmos. I mean, it's a little big ask, but we said, hey, how about something really big? How about designing the cosmos? And as you can see in these ones, a lot of it is basis what you did. Like flight fares because you search for flights, something you search for, so therefore I can show hotels for you. So there is a whole lot of personalization which is coming in because you did this. And again, if you think about it, no rocket science really, kind of. But it's a matter of reorienting the organization, telling them a story and getting them. And actually we did a bunch of films which helped convince the organization. So this is once desktop caught up because we did the app first. Desktop caught up some time back. And then this is Cosmos 1.0, and you'll probably see, I think, 2.0, and we are slipping it in and changing things as we go. And then there's a Cosmos 3.0, which is a whole bunch of kind of components and home pages, and everything keeps changing overall. Now, this is where we end up with. So that was version 1, 2, and 3. This is what you see on the right is version 3. As you can see, a whole bunch of things have come in, which is not a very happy place to be, because everyone is trying to, I think whether it's Paytm or PhonePe or us, or everyone wants to write. I think from a design perspective, it's a nightmare. How do you manage all these lob icons? And it's just like one icon fest, essentially, is what we call it. But again, what we have tried to do is to sort it and structure it and all of it in some ways. Offers cannot go away, but what is it for you? Why does it matter for you? I think that's very, very critical that we've been doing all along. We actually got a taste of our scalability test very recently. That's in 2020. We took this and we said, let's flip it. And we went into the Arabic world with Arabic text, and we were not sure whether it'll all scale up. It beautifully scaled up. It was probably no one actually had much of a complaint. The only complaint was the grammar of the Arabic, which we have no idea. I can't read any of it. But apart from that, I think from a design and all of that, no one really like batted an eyelid. It was like, it was smooth sailing all across. So there you go from an app perspective also. It scales so beautifully, and I'm so proud of the team which has done that. I mean, to do something at such a scale across so many different things. Of course, that means there's a whole bunch of balancing act that you need to be very conscious about, because you're a fairly large universe and there's lots and lots of push and pull. And I think the team has always thought about a lo-fi version for every hi-fi version which is there. How does it look in the PWA? How does it look in X or Y or Z kind of thing, right? We have the transactional stuff and the expressive stuff. So I think if you think about bus, if you think about flights, it's a very transactional. You're just getting it done. I mean, there's no emotional attachment per se. But the moment you say holidays, the moment you say a hotel, I think it becomes very, very expressive. And the idea here is not to mix up the two. You need to get the flights done very quickly. You don't want to waste someone's time. And you need to let someone linger on the holidays and the hotels and all of it. So how do you take same person to different mental models pretty much? The other one, desktop first versus mobile first. So many great examples of sort of mobile first, but I think few examples of desktop first. Holidays is a great example of that. I think we have done this whole new revamp of it. Again, it's kind of done really well. We are waiting for people now to buy holidays. That's a different story. But I think the shop is completely refurbished. We are all open. And what we have done is we have put much more people into it, which is very unusual. I mean, you will see a lot of real people who actually get on the phone and talk to you they are part of the UI. They are actually kind of in the UI. So you see one guy sitting down there, but as you go deeper inside, you will see many more of them. And these are real people, all of them. Of course, the consumer versus the enterprise push and pull. And we've actually expanded a lot in the enterprise part of it. Of course, I think it makes me really happy to see the way all the typefaces come together, and we have been very frugal with it. That's the other part of it. And I think that's the reason why it's come out the way it is. The other one which we kind of did was travel is usually about doing. I mean, it's very transactional, mostly transactional, right? But in this case, what we did was also put in a dreaming aspect to travel, which is, hey, you're not going to go today anywhere, but what if you were to go somewhere in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, for example, right? So this on the left is something called trip ideas, where it's just other people's trips or trip ideas brought together. On the other hand, you have the whole doing in the checklist version of it. You did this, book, 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 book. So how do I do balance both of that kind of? Okay, so I think I'm sure you must be wondering, like, how do you do that? Because it sounds pretty simple. I think it doesn't. It's actually, it takes years to get this done, and especially in an Indian company, because foreign companies do have a different appreciation for design, and they let you do a bunch of things. Maybe they won't let you do it. They will let the designer in the US do a bunch of things, but they will let some designer do something kind of, right? That's the difference overall. Of course, we started with this. We started with the whole, again, it wasn't very complicated, but what is the CTR? What does the map look like? All of it. But what we realized is that I can't do it, a designer can't do it, but together as a group, we can do it. So we need to co-create a culture which essentially keeps churning out its very thoughtful pieces. I mean, it's a thoughtful factory of sensitive stuff. That's probably, in a way, it's a factory. In a way, it's very thoughtful, sensitive, all the sort of emotive stuff as well. Because only in that culture can we continue to create a bunch of these things. If you want it sustainable, you have to create it for a long term kind of. The second is the cross connection between, business and design and tech and everything. You can't do something in isolation. So if I have to convince someone that you need to do X, I need to go back to my example and say, listen, your inconsistencies are bleeding you, and there is a business logic to that. Your bad navigation is doing X. There's a business logic to that. People get it. We need to speak the language of business. That's very, very critical overall. Culture, again, is a funny one, because culture is a very hard thing to get and define. I mean, that's like really goes back to people's stories, rituals, and how things are done. I think great example is Virgin. There's a whole bunch of stories about, how Branson did this. There is a whole lot of things about what we believe in. There is a whole ritual of the way we do things, like Branson being out there and all of it, and which they have sustained over a period of time. So when you join something, you're joining that culture. You're just not sort of getting into a job. You're joining that culture overall. I think this is very critical that we needed to create before we went anywhere. And a culture where design is front and center. I mean, and this is very interesting because someone was asking me, how come you are such a big number? The only thing is now engineering and product will say, design is a blocker. We don't have a designer. We can't do it. But 6 years ago or 7 years ago, someone would have said, you know what, forget design. I mean, I'll do it for you. I'm an engineer. I can do anything kind of, right? But it's good to see that people are kind of changing in that way. So it's good to be a blocker sometimes, actually. So these are the people. I was showing some pictures of those. Sorry, let me just go back. I don't know what happened. A bunch of them, these are like from Goa and all. I was thinking of putting a lot of Zoom shots, and I said, no, that's too much of done. These are real ones when we also go out every year together on some vacation, beach, whatever kind of. Every alternate year is a beach. Every alternate year is somewhere else. The one on the right is Jodhpur. Left is Goa, so kind of having lobsters again. We have the UX Now conference. We again get together. So we have quite a few opportunities to get together as well. And our CEO, we got him in for the conference as well. So we make sure that we also get exec presence in the design conference. So they kind of listen to some 2-3 speakers, and they kind of think, and we usually time it that the best speakers are around their talk or whatever slots. So they also go back, oh, okay, this is very interesting. And this is probably the biggest one, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think this is what Peter Thiel says, and so true. I think instinctively we got it in Adobe, not thoughtfully, but instinctively. And I spent a lot of time in the US, and I think the guys here, we kind of spoke a lot with our counterparts. We got a sense of what it was all about. In Flipkart, I went in and I rushed and I wanted to change things very quickly. I think that just completely did not happen. I mean, there were some gains, but Flipkart was going through a very crazy time, and I did not read the writing on the wall. So I think I should have been more understanding. I should have soaked in culture. And I think this is the first thing: understand the culture, understand what you are up against and what you are going to go with. So don't go upstream, go with the flow. And that's where you need to sort of figure out all your arguments, all your logic around how do you use the flow. Again, nothing new. You would say this is probably Zen philosophy, or this is probably Kung Fu, kind of use the force, kind of how do you use that force? It's pretty much that kind of, so right, this does that. This is something that Surbhi, I think she's here, probably we were talking about the other day, and this is a wonderful kind of play on, letting your people, giving them that permission to fail. It's okay to fail. I mean, there is a completely no harm kind of place where you can do what you want to do and fail at it. But at the same time, you need to give them the processes to succeed. I mean, how will you succeed? Can I give you those tools to succeed? So I think this is the real play that I see from a perspective. The other thing is I've tried all sorts of top-down, bottom-up in Flipkart, in Adobe, in different places. I think the eventual one is share that ownership. Let people think that they are the ones who did this. This idea is theirs, not yours. Eventually, when that happens, I think people feel that ownership. And then Abhinav, who's I think also here, talks about how the tech guys would talk about Cosmosify. I mean, they understood. They didn't know exactly the principles and the things, but they could instinctively tell when something was on brand and something was not on brand, because they felt it was their cosmos, their design language kind of thing, right?
Right.
Other thing which is very important and which is very different in MakeMyTrip, and which I think is very critical, is that start small and slow. Don't kind of make people kind of afraid that you're going to change everything, the whole world in one go. You need to have a big plan, but go very slow and very small. And this is a couple of examples. Like the team actually started with the headers and footers. We said, yeah, we're going to do this big piece, but let's go with headers and footers. Now that's a very harmless piece of thing. And so, okay, fine, we'll go with headers and footers. What's the big deal? But essentially you start changing the system slowly. You change it little by little. It's like the planks in the ship of Theseus. You don't change the ship, you change planks. So you change one plank, you change another plank, that is rotting, this is not right. You change it little bit by bit. You change the checkboxes, you change the page buttons, and so on and so forth. I mean, of course, you need to sort of see concentratedly how does it come together. Some of the learnings we had so what we said is, we are not going to change anything. We're just going to change three things. Change the homepage, change the onboarding, change the headers and footers. That's it. That's all we're going to change. So everyone said, fine. I mean, what's the big harm in doing that? I mean, fine, we're signing up for this. They signed up, we learned something, like, for example, we did some beautiful stuff, and those beautiful stuff didn't fly, of course. They said, well, just need one quick login sort of thing. So anyway, those were experiments. So we kind of lived with it. Contextual stuff, again, fine, people don't want to do something completely new. This is also okay. So lots of small experiments. I think this is the one which is very heartbreaking for most of us. We thought the one on the left would really fly. It didn't fly. People didn't get those bar charts. And I think we have this thing that today people will get those bar charts because COVID has taught them to read charts and data and all sorts of visualizations, right? But they would rather have the one on the right, which is showing all the details with the detailed money and blah, 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 everything kind of there. Another learning, Indians are okay with cognitive load. Maybe not overload, but load is okay to some extent, kind of, right? So the other one, which is actually very important also, I think, is this whole notion of thinking from first principles, but equally not being pedantic about it, but actually living the principles first. Don't go on kind of talk about the principles and put it on Medium and whatever kind of thing. live it first and let it kind of soak in it. And by the way, we still haven't put it on anywhere, on any of, we have our kind of book of principles, but the 4 that we started with was clarity, context, continuity, and confidence. The idea being that what we are helping people is to give them information clearly so that they have the confidence to make decisions. But to make decisions with confidence, people keep coming back. I mean, they don't just buy things like a mop that you can buy on Flipkart at one click. They don't do that. They don't, often searches are not as easy. People don't search that detailed or universal way in travel. So maybe what you need to do is, before you give them the clarity and the confidence, always give them the context and the continuity. So I think they are all interconnected, and they become the 4 C's of Cosmos, which kind of became our kind of rallying cry for what we did. So we then wrote the credo much, much later. I think 3 years after we did this, we wrote the credo, because by then we had lived it already. This is, again, exactly like I'm saying, that it's not what we thought we should write down, but it's more about following something, really. And this is like an unwritten stuff that we have followed largely, and I think those we have gone back. We call ourselves the custodians of confidence, because they should be able to confidently make decisions. We are an aggregator, so I'm not sure whether they want to buy Taj, or they want to buy Oberoi, or they want to buy an Oyo. Whatever they want to buy, they should be able to buy it with whatever is available from our catalog. Buy it with confidence. It's your choice, your decision. This one again, which I think is a very unhealthy practice in Indian startups, is that you are continuously trying to bribe and buy customers. So there's only so much that you can do with that kind of, right? But you can inspire people to shop with confidence again and again. The why, this is very central. I mean, keep asking, why are you doing this? Why is it even important? Why should it even be done? You don't have to do this. Maybe you go and watch a Netflix show, kind of, why are you doing this? I think starting with the why, so that's why, again, why as a compass, very critical. People sometimes get carried away by building Taj. The thing to remember is not Taj the hotels, but Taj the mausoleum is for dead people, kind of. Don't build Taj. I mean, it's beautiful, but not what we're doing, kind of, right? And I think applying those principles at scale, for example, help make better choices. This was the old version. This is a new version. Can this actually help you make better choices? Can they? I'm not saying that choose Vistara over SpiceJet, but I don't know what's your context, but I want to help you make the right choice, kind of, whatever your context is. Clarity. I think this is somewhere, again, we have a lot of detailed information at times, but how can we even make it easier? I know we can't cut it down, and we can't say that, okay, I'm just going to show you 10% of what we have just for the beauty's sake. I want to show you everything, but I'm going to give you ways to navigate that as well. Context and confidence, and I just really like this example, which is especially about, again, understanding what do users want, what do users typically call for, why are they complaining, they don't know the host location, for example. So I think those kinds of things, bringing it out, again, fairly sensible stuff. And with that, I think a reminder that whatever we do, we write our work on water. This is actually someone leaving Adobe had said this in an email. And I think that has remained with me over so many years, I think almost 9 years, 10 years, that's true. I mean, very few things that we do, unlike a Bangalore International Airport logo, survive to the rigors, kind of. Anything done at the same time, UI done at the same time as a logo, that UI will look so pathetically bad, kind of. So it ages very, very badly, kind of thing. So UX is a so don't bother too much about a bunch of things. This is what we did. Essentially, what we did was we changed an entire company, but one plank at a time. And I think with permission, because people, I mean, like sacred cows, you have sacred ships also, and people like the CX was a little like, oh, you're going to change everything, but I hold this dear. I mean, I built this company 17 years, and tomorrow some kid is coming and telling me, let's change everything. No way I'm going to do that. I think that's where you get the confidence and a plank at a time. So yeah, I think, thank you. And there we are. You can catch us in many places. We're a little shy. As I said, these bunch put their heads down and work a lot. And that's great too. I mean, you don't have to be broadcasting yourself 24/7 on social media, which is a great thing, because finally good design is about good business. And this was one of the things I always used to get reminded when I would walk in from a VC world. Someone said, hey, yaar, clear trip or make my trip, dekho, mere ko to, theek hai, design and all that, theek hai, but business to theek hona chahiye, kind of. So this is a reminder that eventually we are all about top lines and bottom lines and doing it right by our users. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay. Guys, just post your questions on chat like others have been doing. But Jay, thank you. This has just been a wonderful, presentations, I would say. So I just wanted to start with, I think your one thing that you kind of like is the running theme between all the presentations, the fact that you're a great storyteller. How important is that in your daily work at MMT?
I think that's very critical. So my mom happens to be a storyteller. She loves telling stories. And, I was like so fed up because as a teenager especially, you don't want to hear her stories and you don't want to talk about but in hindsight, I've realized that this is a great gift actually. And I think I've got that gift from her of being able to tell stories. Take the same thing, pretty much rethink it and tell it, because it's just making up metaphors and seeing the connections. There's this beautiful quote by Steve Jobs. When you look back, you can connect all those dots. And I think you can't connect all those dots looking forward. So I think part of it is with time, I reflect back. And I think this is very critical for all of us. I think we are consuming, but not reflecting. So when you are spending time on Twitter or on whatever, Insta or whatever, you're consuming and you're just saying, oh, X did that and I did not do this. But I think you've done some fantastic stuff. Just reflect back on your story, your unique story. And I think there's so much that you will find in that story per se. So yeah, I think reflection is a way to tell stories, I guess. Just think and you'll probably find. The other thing is to read a lot and find connections here and there and everywhere. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the thing.
No, but don't you feel like, especially in enterprises with so many people involved, it's the better way to communicate? Sue Basu has touched upon this in her presentation, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
I think that's always the case, because eventually CXOs, they understand what is a 4.3 billion and what's a million. But I think they do understand instinctively the whole user part of it. Sure. And when they hear a story about a user and about what's happening and what's not happening and all of that, they get it. They resonate. That resonates with them. Sure. And they can then make the connection saying, oh, okay, pissed off users is not good for the business, blah, blah, blah. I think it's not rocket science. They get it kind of. And they get it. The other thing we have, which is, and I think this is the same thing we had in roundabout way in Adobe, is that, you are a user, you're not the user. So CXOs will very often have a thing of saying that, when I used it, I found this way. Yes, of course, your experience is real and true, but that may not be true for someone sitting in Indore. Have you thought about this story of this particular person that we spoke to in Indore? The UX research team, they do a lot of work going into the homes, pre-pandemic, of course. Yeah. And I think some of these guys were blown away, because typically they're used to, doing sort of these group discussions where everyone comes to a 5-star hotel. But here's the team going to someone's house, and the evidence of travel is not the stories they tell you. It's on that fridge magnet. It's on that photo frame. And I think when the CEOs and all of them see that, they say, oh my God, this is so much more powerful than me asking someone answering. There is a whole world out there which is unsaid, but totally documented kind of. So I think they get it. And this is a great way of telling. Actually, when we first sold the idea of Cosmos and putting the My back into MakeMyTrip, it was a film. Okay. And if you remember, I think we started doing films when I used to go to the US and show a short film, because no CXO can ever interrupt a film or ask it questions. So I think that is the best way to tell a story.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think it's so critical, especially when you're dealing with large organizations, for sure. Sure. There's a question here. I would ask the person, Rajpal Singh Bhatti, please ask your question if you don't mind unmuting and doing it.
Hey, sorry I can't switch on the video, but I'll ask the question.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I hope I'm audible, right?
You are.
Yeah. So I was wondering, like, you took us through your journey, which involved some going to Bristol and London and Manchester. So what do you see is the difference in the design cultures in Western countries and India, and how the difference itself has evolved over the time? You know, where do you think we lack, or where are our strengths, and what does the future hold?
I think we are, it's a sad thing, but it's a reality also, is that we have always tried, especially with the new age stuff, or like UX and stuff, we have tried to ape a lot of the Western world. So we typically keep looking at what is happening in the Silicon Valley, and we try and do that here. And I just wonder what's the happy middle ground. Of course, something like a MakeMyTrip or a Zomato, you could say, is a happy middle ground, because it's a lot of West, but it's also a lot of clutter as well. It's not completely clutter free, but that's not what the user is demanding either. The user actually is demanding more information rather than too less. That's the other part of it. So I think what is very important is to, again, going back to pretty much the old idea of know who you are and just be who you are. That's what it matters, right? I think knowing who you want to be as a brand, as a company, as a country, and just being right for your users, that's probably what's important. So if you look at China has digressed completely from the West. And now suddenly West is waking up and saying, my God, these guys are like mind blowing. I mean, I can't understand anything, partly because it's in Chinese, partly because it's too cluttered. I don't get it. But that's the reality. And I think it's great. I think we very often judge things by standards we don't understand or we understand. So our standards is X. So for example, again, a great thing would be how jokes have evolved over the years and centuries. So what may be okay 50 years ago is like a no-no in this very woke world kind of thing. Now, suddenly, like, this is not done, kind of like grandpas telling some very offensive jokes kind of thing, right? I mean, from their point of view, it's not offensive at all, kind of like they don't get it. So I think it's about how you read design really, kind of, and what you think. I don't think it's a good or bad. Those are really subjective terms. It's about relevance or irrelevance. That's probably very important. I think I wouldn't say I'm not kind of sad that India has not found its design language or kind of identity, and we still are aping the West. But I think it will change. It will change when we start to adopt a lot of Indian languages and Indian scripts. That's when the change will happen. The reason why China has got it is because the script dictates a whole bunch of things. Japan has got a very unique way of doing things because they are still led by the Japanese language and their script types, right? Now, the moment it becomes a Hindi or an Urdu or a Bengali, I think we have beautiful typefaces and beautiful kind of fonts. It's just a matter of like, when you adapt that, the language will also change, but you can't force fit it. Like in some ways, we have beautifully force fitted Arabic into MakeMyTrip. To us, it looks beautiful. I don't know what an Arabic reading person thinks about it. I mean, we know because we've done a lot of user research on that. But for them, it may be too cluttered, for example, kind of there's too much there because they're also used to less. So yeah, I think about it as it's different and it's similar. There is no easy answer to this one, Rajpal. But what I can say is suddenly Indian design is being respected. People are looking up to it. So they want Indian designers in Indonesia and in Singapore and in the West Coast and in wherever kind of thing. Now that you could say is also a sign of the times when Indian designers have made it big on a global scale. When I went to the UK, they wouldn't definitely hire an Indian designer. And it was just as a trick I got in because they thought I was from Mauritius. But today, I think they're very welcome, very, very welcome.
Jay, just to follow up on that, would you, I mean, especially because Indian businesses are extremely business oriented, that's what I've come to learn. So is the UX is the first thing that gets affected, right? Especially because of business principles. Do you feel that UX has not evolved to be, to adopt a Indian language, or while the UI might take a longer time catching up to an Indian design? Do you feel that dichotomy, or what are your thoughts
I
here?
think UX may have evolved better than the UI part of it, or and part of it, the visual look and feel is to do with your language. I think that dictates so much of the UI part of it. The other reason why UX kind of is where it is that you can tweak a bunch of things. Like, for example, if you think about Google Flights versus MakeMyTrip flights, Google Flights is much more cleaner and sparse. It may work in kind of London and it may work in Zurich, but it doesn't work here. The same businessman who flies to Zurich 5 times a year maybe wants more information and acts on more information, kind of, right? So from that perspective, there is a kind of a happy middle ground which we are reaching. From the UI perspective, I guess a lot of people who are paying money today are the guys who are conversant in English. So we are making stuff for people like us, who again, if you look at Swiggy, Zomato, MakeMyTrip, all these kind of companies, it's mostly for people like us. Right. The moment you go to a tier 3, tier 4 city, they're not ordering a Swiggy. They are not buying a flight ticket from Delhi to Bombay. Chances are that they don't even have a flight in their, okay, they're buying railways, they're buying rails, but then their chances are they're going to IRCTC, and they know IRCTC and they know how it works.
Right.
It's not more useful or it's not more easier. They just know how it works. That's it.
Sure. Ashutosh Bilatria, would you mind asking your question, please?
Yeah, I'll just. Yeah, I mean, I will kind of ask a follow-up question actually. So, because we are talking about Western and Indian design, so how do you think Indian design education can play a role? Because generally, so I did my master's from NID, and then I did another master's from Umio Institute of Design in interaction design, so that I can make a move, because I wanted to study and work abroad and in Europe. So I've seen, so when I was applying for jobs here, they were hardly considering my Indian experience, which I had around 8 years. But they were considering my master's as experience, like master's from Umio Institute of Design. So I feel in UX, it's a little easier to make a move directly from India to companies abroad. But for core product designers or core designers, it is a little difficult. My friends are kind of struggling as well if they want to join a company. So I feel somewhere design education is also not picking up very fast with the current trends. So how do you think they can, like the schools in India can play a role? And yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a great question, because I think if you look at the system, there are 2 problems inherently. One is it's not that the schools don't want to do it. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, a whole bunch of schools have mushroomed. I mean, you get kind of courses for 99 rupees, 499, 599, it's like Maggie 2-minute noodles kind of courses sort of coming up. But many of them are, of course, it doesn't have the depth or the focus overall for it. If you look at the more serious, more industry-oriented courses, the big problem and challenge I see is that there are not enough teachers. When we were growing up, we were lucky to have people who dedicated their lives to just teaching. That's all they wanted to do. Some of my teachers are still teaching. That's the beauty of it. And they didn't want to be in industry. They didn't want to be a hotshot designer kind of, right? But the problem today is that a lot of people are not, the great teachers are not there. And people who just put their heads down and teach. That's the one missing bit. A lot of people who are teaching are also people with very limited experience, because nothing wrong, they've got the passion, they are doing a good job of it, but they don't have the vast experience of some of the teachers of the yesteryears. And we desperately need teachers in new technologies, in new emerging kind of an areas. And that actually is a very small number overall. So this is going to be, and the number of companies, I mean, the universities are just mushrooming kind of like crazy, right? So this definitely is kind of a mismatch that I see in India in design education. Look, if you think in terms of the practices part of it, I think India actually is a great place for practice, because it's just in some ways it's like someone in Copenhagen sitting and saying that, listen, you can't do this or you can't do that. Fact is that if you worked in the very harsh and very, very trying conditions of India, you can pretty much make sense of the Silicon Valley or anywhere. And that's what you're seeing probably a lot today, because the way Indian designers or Indians in general can take stress, I think it's unbelievable. So today what you are seeing with CEOs in the West being Indian, so Adobe's, Microsoft, you name it kind of thing, they have a whole army of Indian CEOs in the US. I think another 10, 15, 20 years when you would have Indian heads of design for these companies out there in the West. One of the things which will make them wake up is the fact that, so right now there is, of course, they're saying, hey, Indian education is not good enough. Is it not good enough? I don't think so. I think there are still good teachers and good places, but yes, they are stretched. Many places have got average teachers or people who did not make it come back to teach. A lot of places have a lot of very good teachers, very dedicated people. I mean, I work with a lot of people who I see are super dedicated, who love to teach, and they could have done a good job if they were outside as well. But it's just their passion for teaching which brings them here. So I think we need to reward our teachers. We need to sort of really invest a lot more into the teaching ecosystem to have great courses. You can't have great universities without great teachers. So that's just a brand. I mean, what's a brand without the people, really, kind of thing. So that is my thing. But I think a lot of experienced professionals are extremely capable of teaching and going back and teaching. And I would probably say to all of many of you here, especially the experienced guys, people with 7, 10 years of experience, think about going back and teaching. That's one way to kind of elevate the role of design in India across. I think people need you. Not just to say that, this is how the industry does it and this is how you should do it, but just for them to think around in a broader sense that, how should we approach design? Okay, sorry, very long answer, but I hope that helps.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
We'll just ask one last question, Jay. How are you doing on time? You're okay?
I'm good. I'm good. If people are not falling off, then that's all good.
No. Praveen, can you ask your question, please? Is Praveen on? Okay. Sorry, I'll just ask Alipta to just ask the question. I think it will be interesting.
Yeah. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Alipta.
Hey, so I just have one question, like, what kind of leadership style you follow in your organization? I mean, especially if you, would you recommend some kind of a specific style which the budding design leader should follow? Or do you follow anything specific? Just some insights on that.
Right. I think the way I think about leadership, I think the two difference, of course, and I'm sure all of us here know, there's a difference between managing and leading. They are two very different things. And very often we kind of mix up the two. I think leading essentially is about taking a very large view of things, whether it is for the company, whether it is for your team, for individuals within your team, and all of that. The other way which I do, which has been great for me, is that I have a fantastic team of managers who work with me. The happy thing is that I let them do what they want to do, and they are happy that I don't interfere too much. Apart from reviews and apart from the places where I say, hey, don't put some dark overlay on top and left align your type and don't force justify it. Apart from that, I don't kind of interfere too much. They're happy. I'm not micromanaging, hopefully. So I think it's a dual thing. You give them more responsibility, they produce some great results back for you. So And this is true for even the young people. I think it's almost like this, that going back to the permission to fail and the process is to succeed. That I think is very, very critical. You will give people enough room and permission to fail. Beyond a certain point, you need to take them out if they don't live up to it. But the idea is that as an individual, you're trying to improve that individual. If that person doesn't take ownership, I think somewhere you have to part ways. On the other hand, you can't wash off your hands and say there is no processes. I think you need to have processes which help your team make most of it. The other being which I have not talked about, but it's also this whole duality of when do you be the protector of the team and when do you be the principal, the disciplinarian of the team, right? I think everyone expects you to protect the team, watch their backs. Yes, you should always do that. At the same time, what's the happy balance? Where do you kind of say, guys, you maybe made a mistake and you need to do this better, kind of, right? So I think you have to be a fairly impartial person in this case, and it takes time. I think, and there are times when you go wrong also. But the idea is to keep balancing that. You can't be overprotective, because if you're too overprotective, you end up with truant children. That's the other way of it. If you are too underprotective, then you have children who kind of think that, you know, they don't care, kind of thing. So what is the right amount of protection and guidance, kind of thing? That's the one which I use, and I think I have a presentation for that separate one another day, is I always talk about the Gandalf way, which is, so if you think about Gandalf is someone who will laugh with all his hobbits and who will do fireworks, and he is a stupid guy sometimes. He wields great magic, but he doesn't use it. He doesn't use it readily, and not for the smallest of things. He keeps disappearing and leaves the kids to fight it on their own, but he comes back at the times when it's needed the most. I think those are some great ways of leading without being in the forefront and without being always behind people, kind of thing, right? You need to disappear, you need to reappear at times, use your persuasion, use your wisdom at times, and be a child again. So combination. So think of Gandalf the next time you think of leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. And one final question. What's your favorite font now?
You will actually see it very soon. I think it's a secret. I'll tell you, but maybe in a few weeks. It starts with an M, and we are doing a website. It should be an interesting reveal. Maybe by mid-August, we should reveal that very soon. But that's got my latest favorite fonts. Actually, I loved it so much that I decided not to use much pictures and just use fonts. Why and which font? I think you will see soon.
Do post about it on Twitter.
I will do that. Actually, someone the other day posted about that, and I said, "Oh, the world has discovered this. This is my secret stash of good font."
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this, Jay. This has been wonderful. It's such a nice thing to see you speak about it from, how design has evolved in so many ways, and how you can actually utilize all that experience and how that's playing a role in your work today. Thank you so much for sharing all this. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Sharan, for inviting me. And thanks to all of you for taking time off on a Friday evening, and really appreciate that. If you can, would love to see you guys for a moment. I know a lot of people, so I kind of know the faces, but there are lots of faces which I don't know. So yeah, I think it would be lovely to see some of you. And yes, there we go. Some more. Hey, Shatej.
Sorry, my camera
hey,
is not
working. Hi, Sue. Hi, Dinesh. Hey, Dinesh, you're here.
Hey, Jay. Hi.
Hi. So yeah, good to see product managers and designers, everyone here, kind of. That's great. Lovely having been given this opportunity to speak. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you being a patient audience and not asking me very difficult questions.
Thank you all. We'll be posting this video on our YouTube channel. So if you would like to come back and share this, please do. Cheers. Have a great weekend. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, folks. Thank you. Bye-bye.